Good evening, and I welcome you, students. We are going to begin a new topic, a new chapter. It's already there on the screen, atoms and molecules. I hope you are already familiar with the idea of atoms and molecules. When I write atom and molecules, what do you mean by atom, students? I think some idea is already there. Atom means something which cannot be divided, which cannot be divided. That is what was the meaning of what we mean by atom, something which we call as indivisible. Indivisible means it cannot be further divided. You are aware of some history of this, as the Indian philosophers, Greek philosophers, they were trying to find out whatever, is there anything the matter is made up of. After all, you see different things on planet Earth. You are experiencing right now, while where you are sitting, you are seeing so many objects around you. The question was, what is something which we cannot see with our eyes in this matter? You have a glass full of water here. I am sipping water. Water is visible to me, but is there something in the water which is not visible to me? Glass is visible to me. What is this glass made up of? The question has been, if I take an apple, divided, can I keep on breaking it, or there is some stage when I cannot break it any further? So if we go on dividing the matter, we shall get smaller and smaller particles. You have matter, you divide it, what will happen? You are getting smaller and smaller particles. But you are trying to get smaller and smaller particles. Will you reach a stage and you will get the smallest particle? So that now you cannot divide it. It is indivisible. This is the idea. And in Indian philosophers talk of Parmanu. Parmanu. So what it means, these are the particles which cannot be divided further, smallest particles. And these particles does not exist independently. They are existing in aggregates, in combined form, to create different types of matters which we see. And in Greek philosophers also, they say that if you keep on dividing the matter, keep on dividing the particles, a stage will come when these particles will become indivisible. Indivisible means cannot be divided further. So this was based on philosophical concentrations. This is all philosophical things, and you need experimental work to support what you are talking, to validate this idea. And before 18th century, all this was done by philosophers. Philosophers are not actual scientists because they don't have experimental tools to do all the things and verify them. And scientists also came to know the difference by the end of 18th century. By the end of 18th century, I am saying. What happened by the end of 18th century? The scientists could get a difference that there are elements and compounds. So this idea started coming that hydrogen is element, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur. When I say hydrogen is element, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, Cl, etc. There are elements. But compounds, there are compounds. When I say water, H2O, this is my water. When I say carbon dioxide, student, CO2, carbon dioxide. So what you are getting, this idea was there by the end of the 18th century. They came to know there is a difference between elements and compounds and became interested to know why these elements, why do elements combine after all? Why they are combining and forming large number of compounds? Different elements combine and you get millions and millions of different type of substances, compounds, what you see in your daily life. That was important, that why should, if there are elements combined, how they combine, all this was to be studied. Now there was a need of doing some experiments, students, some activities before we say anything in science. There's a difference between philosophy and science, as you can see. In science, experiments will be done. Activities we are doing already for every chapter. You have seen we are doing activities in the science labs in order to find out the results, and we make observations of the activities and experiments, and then we conclude, come out with certain theories, postulates, or whatever we want to say. You know, there are important scientists here. Lavoisier. What is his full name? Anton L. Lavoisier. Now these are important persons, student. And you are also aware of Joseph L. Proust. Important scientists, students. They laid the foundation of chemical sciences. Laid the foundation of chemical sciences. Chemical sciences, chemistry. Chemical means some chemical change will take place, some reaction will take place. Chemical sciences, science of chemicals, science of compounds, some science of some reaction between one substance and another. Laid the foundation of chemical sciences by doing some experiments. Again, I'm saying experiments, activities. We do what we do in science activities. What we are saying, what we are doing, students, some activities, experiments, and then we will make some observations, record it, you will record them, and then you will form certain laws. You will form some laws based on the experimental observations. And they established two important laws of chemical combination. Two important laws of chemical combination. Two important laws of chemical combinations. These laws were studied by what I'm talking about, Lavoisier and Proust. So they have performed experiments, they have done activities, and studied what we call today as the laws of chemical combination. Laws of chemical combination. The work is attributed to Lavoisier and Proust. Let us see what are the two important laws. Note down, everything is important, students. You already have an idea that matter, what we are saying, what is the matter, student? Any substance which you are seeing as mass, as volume, right now, whatever substances are lying before you, they are made up of small particles called atoms. Small particles called atoms. And they say atom is the smallest building block of the matter, but it is not visible to us. Our eyes cannot see it. This is very small, very small particle. They are very small. They are smaller than anything we can imagine or compare with. But your eyes are used to seeing. You are seeing your house. And now I can say the house is made from where, student? You see the wall of the house. How do you get house? There are bricks. And these are the building blocks of your house. Building blocks of the, if I say walls of the house. So matter, different matter you are seeing, we are saying they are made up of tiny particles which are very small, and we are saying Paramanu, atom, they are made up of small particles which are atoms, but we cannot see them because it is very small. So atom is the smallest unit of ordinary matter that forms a chemical element. Chemical element. What chemical element? Hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. These are chemical elements. Every solid, liquid, gas, and plasma is composed of neutral or ionized atoms. We'll explain all these terms. Neutral atom, ionized means they have charges. They have charges positive or negative. And are extremely small, typically around 100 picometers across. They are so small that accurately predicting their behavior using classical physics as if they were tennis ball is not possible due to quantum mechanics. As property cannot be predicted easily because their size is very small, mass is very small, students. They are not like the balls which you are seeing. The ball itself is made up of these tiny particles which we are seeing, atoms. This is some idea which is already there with us. So what laws are there which were done by Lavoisier and Proust, students, which laid the foundation for the atoms and molecules or chemical laws, chemical combination, laws of chemical combination. Let us see about that. We are saying by the end of the 18th century, scientists recognized, before the 18th century, you are having philosophers, students. Philosophers are not doing experiments because they don't have the means, tools, equipments to perform activities and experiments. But after that, what we are doing? Experiments, activities. Recognize the difference between elements and compounds. And naturally became interesting in finding out why elements combine. What happens when they combine? If I have two substances, we try to react. If I have element, they are forming compounds. We are saying, why are they forming compounds and how one element will react with another. One element does not react with another, one reacts. Under what conditions reaction take place? Some elements are reacting in the atmospheric air. Some do not react. Some needs higher temperature. So there are conditions also. All these are of interest to the scientist. Anthony Lavoisier laid the foundation of chemical sciences by establishing two important laws of chemical combination. What are the two important laws, students, which we will be studying? One is the law of conservation of mass. Conservation of mass. Important. The word conservation is being used a lot in science. And second is the law of constant proportions. Constant, fixed proportion. Law of constant proportion. There are many other laws which will be studied in higher classes. But these are the two main laws for the 9th class students. Laws of constant proportions or definite proportions. Constant means definite proportion. Definite proportion. Let us study these last students. What I'm talking is, student, the first important law is coming before us. Law of chemical. What do you mean by chemical combination? There's a combination A plus B gives something. But chemical means some chemical reaction will take place, some chemical reaction will take place, chemical combination. But important point is the first one, law of conservation of mass. What it means, student? Mass is conserved. Mass cannot be created nor be destroyed during a chemical process. What is a chemical process? Means a chemical change will take place, a chemical reaction will take place. And when a chemical reaction will take place, the mass will be conserved. What will happen? Mass will be conserved. That is what I'm saying. The law of conservation states that in a chemical reaction, mass is neither created nor destroyed. That means the total mass of reactants will be equal to total mass of the products after the reaction takes place. After the reaction takes place. But reaction must be done in a closed container, because if it is open, what will happen? If a gas is formed, it will escape, students. So if I'm reacting some substances in general, what I'm saying that here I have a substance A and there is a substance B, student. A plus B reacts to form, supposing C plus D, anything. That mass of total mass before the reaction and total mass after the reaction. If the reaction is performed in closed containers, nothing to escape out, then what will happen? These masses should be equal. Masses should be equal before the reaction and after the reaction. So in another ways, I can put this by another form. Law of conservation of mass states that mass in an isolated system is neither created nor destroyed by chemical reactions or physical transformations. Note down each and everything, student. It is important. They will ask you all these questions later. So what we are saying, if a reaction takes place, then the mass before or after will remain the same. Okay, supposing, consider, students, you have a container. There you put some substance in it. You know, there is already air also inside this. You close it. Close, I'm saying you closed it. Because if, supposing you leave some food or anything here, what will happen? The food will undergo a chemical change slowly and slowly. What will be the result? Then some reaction has taken place. But I have closed it. So what is happening? Reactants were there. They may form some products. So if it is a closed one, you can take the mass of this before and after. Tell me, will the mass change?
No, sir.
Mass will remain the same. What we are saying, student, the mass of the products in a chemical reaction must be equal to mass of the reactants. Reactants can be anything. There is air, oxygen, gas, which is reacting, oxidizing this substance. But what we are saying, mass of the products must be equal to mass of the reactant. That is what we mean conservation of the mass. So total mass of reactants is equal to total mass of products. What do you mean by isolated system? Means it is not interacting with any other system. It is closed. There's no leakage of any gas or anything. Nothing is coming out, coming in or going out. It is not possible. It is totally closed. That is what we say. The system is isolated. It is not reacting or interacting with the surroundings. The surroundings. Once we give a definition, then we have to verify, student. How will we say this is correct? We will have to perform experiment or activity to verify. How will you verify, student, what we are saying is correct? Can we write without verification? In science, the answer is no. We have to do some experiments. Some activity has to be done, student, to verify. So let us see what activity you can do, student. Experiment or activity. What we are saying, take one of the following sets. Set X and Y. Okay? You have in X posing copper sulfate solution. You have 5% copper sulfate solution. And what is Y? You have sodium carbonate. But it's saying prepare separately 5% solution of any one pair. Pair 1. I am taking pair 1. Pair 1. This is my 1. Pair 1, student. It has copper sulfate solution. How much? 5%. And 5% solution of sodium carbonate. Sodium carbonate solution, student. You are prepare 5%. How do you prepare 5%? You know what is the mass of copper sulfate and this, how much water you have to dissolve to make 5%. You are preparing two solution X and Y. Okay? Prepare 5% solution of one pair of substances listed under X. We are using this one, copper sulfate and sodium carbonate. You can take this and this, or this and this also. Take a little amount of solution of Y in a conical flask. Student, what is a conical flask? This is my Y. You see that this is a conical flask, student. In the chemistry lab, you have seen conical flask?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Conical flask, student, in chemistry lab. What you are taking solution Y. What is this? Solution Y. Okay? Little amount of Y. Let me take 10 milliliter. 10 milliliter of Y, which is 5% solution of sodium carbonate. This is in this flask. Okay? What
Yes,
then?
sir.
And some solution of X in ignition tube, student. This is X you are taking in a, this is my ignition tube. In the chemistry lab, student. You are taking, supposing 10 milliliter, you can take supposing 10 milliliter or some amount of this. Supposing I take 10 milliliter of 5% of this copper sulfate. What is an ignition tube, student? What do you mean by ignition tube? In the chemistry lab, you have seen test tubes.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by, why they call it ignition tube? Because if you heat it, it should not break, student. You know, the test tubes are heated. Take a test tube and heat it. If supposing it breaks on heating, then the whole solution will fall down. You know, that is why we call ignition tubes can be heated if required. If required, we heat them. Now in this, you are taking copper sulfate. You can take it. Then what will you do, students? this tube you are putting in here, ठीक है, inside this tube, this one, ignition tube, and close it from the top. How will you close it? How will you close it? Put a cork on the top of that. Why we are closing it? So that nothing goes in or nothing goes out or comes in. Closed container is there. That means if a gas is formed, it will be inside it. And from outside also, nothing can come in. What we have done, you can see here is my cork, student. Do you see a cork? Cork. This is your cork. Why do you put a cork? What is the purpose of cork, student?
Sir, because nothing can enter or go.
Closed. You are closing it, closed. Here is a thread. This is my conical flask, and you have solution Y. Where? In the flask. What is my Y solution here? 5% sodium carbonate. How much you have taken? 10 milliliter. 10 milliliter. This is your ignition tube. This is a small ignition tube. And you have taken here also, supposing 10 or 5 milliliter of X. This is my Y. This is my X. What is my X? 5% solution of copper sulfate. Right now, the two are kept so that they do not mix. They do not mix. Student, put it like this. Can we do it?
Yes, sir.
And what will you do then? You can wait. Wait, student. Take the weight of this. Right now, nothing has happened. We have taken and doesn't the weight of this. Weight of this. Weigh the flask with all the contents. Okay? This is a conical flask. Flask contents whatever is inside this. Can you weigh it? How do you weigh in the science lab? What do you have for weighing? Electronic balances are also available nowadays to weigh that. After that, what will you do, student? You tilt the flask. What will happen if you tilt it? What we are doing? Let us see. Weigh the flask with its contents carefully. This is before mixing. Before mixing. Supposing you weight W grams. Whatever weight it comes, you can use electronic balance or anything else. Now tilt the flask so that X and Y get mixed. When X will and Y will get mixed, what will happen, student? What you have taken? You have copper sulfate. And what you have? Sodium carbonate, student, solution. When you will mix, what will happen? They will react. A reaction will take place. So you can get CuCO3. CuCO3, and you can get, this is Na2SO4, student, aqueous. And this may be, if it is a solid disposing, then a solid will be formed. Okay? There will be a solid formation if it is solid. So what will happen in the reaction when they mix? There will be a chemical reaction. Okay? Chemical reaction. For example, how many combinations were there? If I take barium chloride and sodium sulfate, number 2, supposing I take student number 2, X1 is barium chloride. If I take barium chloride and sodium sulfate, X and Y, again, what will be the result of that? Chemical reaction will take place, you will get barium sulfate. This is a solid, for example, and you will get Na2, 2NaCl. Everything is in a closed container, students. And then you weigh it again. Now he says, what happens in the reaction flask? What is your answer? What happens in the reaction flask?
Sir, a reaction occurs.
Chemical reaction. Chemical reaction takes place. Do you think chemical reaction has taken place? Yes. Why should you put a cork? Why you have put a cork? Tell me.
So that nothing can enter or leave the flask.
Yes. It becomes a closed system. Whatever is produced, gas is, if gas is there, it is still inside. Nothing has come out. Solid is there, it is inside the flask. 7, does the mass of flask and its content change? After, you will weigh it before and after. What do you think? There is a change in mass or mass remains the same?
Sir, mass remains same.
All right. You will observe, student. You will observe experimentally that mass remains same after chemical reaction. After chemical reaction has taken place. What it proves, students? What it proves to? It proves that the mass is not changed before the and after the reaction. Does it prove that?
Yes, sir.
So what is the conclusion of this experiment, student? You can take X, Y different combinations which we have given here. You can take lead nitrate and sodium chloride and study this. So it states that the mass is neither created nor destroyed in a chemical reaction. Mass remains the same. Mass remains same before and after the chemical reaction. This was the first law which was studied. We have given the name of this law. You see that these experiments are being done by Lavoisier. Laws of chemical combination. Laws of what we call them as laws of chemical combination, students. So this is the law of conservation of mass, that mass can neither be created nor be destroyed in a chemical reaction. If I don't put a cork, if a gas is formed, it will escape, then how the two will be equal? You see, when we do the experiment in science lab, there are few errors. And we know 100% accuracy is not there, whatever we observe. But we are saying that this mass is not going to be created or destroyed during any chemical reaction. So that was the first law of chemical combination, which was studied by the end of the 18th century, which laid the foundation of the chemical sciences. Lavoisier, law of conservation of mass, students. No doubt. Any doubt here, students?
No, sir.
Okay. We have to understand each and everything very clearly, slowly. No problem. Now the second law is coming. And as we said that Lavoisier and Proust are the two people who are involved in this. One other important thing was law of constant or definite proportion. It is also called law of definite proportion. Lavoisier, very important. And other scientists noted that many compounds are composed of two or more elements. What they found? They were studying compounds. If water is a compound, student, it is composed of hydrogen and oxygen. Carbon dioxide is a compound, student. It is composed of carbon and oxygen. Ammonia is a compound, student. It is composed of nitrogen and hydrogen. So what they found, that compounds are made up of elements, students. As I said, the main purpose is why do elements combine? These are the elements which combine and produce such a large variety of compounds that the whole universe which you see, different type of substances are there, where they are again formed from these elements. Now the question is, if you have a same elements in a if I say a compound is water, student, water is a compound. It is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. So it is composed of two elements. And what they found, water, when they studied water, they said it is formula is like H2O. What it means, student? What it means? They found the elements are combining in a definite proportion, in a constant proportion in water. Does not matter water you can get from any source. You have water in a sea, you have water in a river. Rainwater is coming. When it is water, then they find that the composition of the water, that chemical compounds are made up of elements that are present in fixed ratio by mass. When I am saying water, student, water is a compound. You can take water from a river. You can take water from the sea. You are saying this is a rainwater. When water is H2O, it is made up of two elements, hydrogen and oxygen, and they are present in fixed ratio by mass. These elements are present in fixed ratio, student, by mass. Always they are present in fixed ratio. Does not matter. Water you can make or use from any source. This implies that very pure sample of a compound, no matter the source, will always consist of same elements that are present in the same ratio by mass. And what they studied experimentally, they found that in H2O, student, the ratio of the mass of hydrogen, the ratio of mass of hydrogen to oxygen is 2:16, means 2:16 means this is 1:8. 1:8, student, whatever may be the source. 1:8 means what is the total mass? If I say the total mass is 1 plus 8, 9, then if I take 9 gram of H2O, student, 9 gram of H2O, it will contain how much? 9 gram will contain how much, student? 1 gram of hydrogen and how many oxygen? 8 gram of oxygen. So in 9 gram of water, there is 1 gram of hydrogen and 8 gram of oxygen. So any H2O from any source, the two elements present are hydrogen and oxygen, and they are present in fixed ratio by mass. In fixed ratio by mass, students. This is very important. Now I say that supposing you have NH3 student. Actually, I have not told you the concept of atomic mass in this. We will discuss it in this same chapter in our next lecture. Then you will know why I am taking this ratio. If I take NH3 student, then I'm saying it is always made up of ammonia. Ammonia is always made up of two elements. Which are the two elements present in ammonia? Nitrogen and hydrogen. And they are present in the ratio of this is 14:3 student. So the ratio of mass of nitrogen versus hydrogen is 14:3 gram. In other words, if I have 17 gram of NH3 students, how much of nitrogen is there in this 17 gram?
14 gram.
Okay, if I say there is a 17 gram of NH3, then you are saying it contains 14 gram of nitrogen and 3 gram of hydrogen. This is a fixed proportion. Is not going to change, student. You can prepare or get ammonia from any source. Ammonia can be obtained by different methods. You can get ammonia from any source. Very important points. Note down everything. This is what we call as law of definite proportion or constant proportion. Law of definite or constant proportion. Note down. When water has both hydrogen and oxygen, one atom of oxygen is combined with two atoms of hydrogen to create water molecule. Salt of NaCl is composed of Na and Cl atoms. For it to be created, both sodium and chlorine atom have to be exact same proportions. Same proportion. So in a compound such as water, the ratio of mass of hydrogen to mass of oxygen. So what we are saying in water, the mass ratio is fixed. So hydrogen is to oxygen is always 1:8. In NH3 student, mass ratio is always, you have nitrogen and you have hydrogen. How much is this? 14:3. If I say carbon dioxide student, then you have carbon and oxygen. Carbon is 12. Oxygen is how much? 32. So 4, 3, the how much is that? 4, 8. The 3:8. The ratio will be 3:8. If I use grams, no problem. So, student, there is a definite proportion by mass of the elements which are present in a compound. Note down, very important. Note down, students. Let me give a top question on this before we proceed further, student. Top question number 1, student. How many laws of chemical combination we have studied? Tell me.
2 laws.
What are the 2 laws?
Laws of conservation of mass and law of constant proportion.
Of conservation of mass. And second, law of conservation of second law of
Constant proportions.
constant proportion. Okay. Question number 1, top question. In a reaction, 5.3 gram of sodium carbonate reacted with 6 gram of ethanoic acid. The products were 2.2 gram of carbon dioxide, 0.9 gram of water, and 8.2 gram of sodium. Show that these observations are in agreement with the law of conservation of mass. Okay, you have 2 minutes to answer the question. So this is an experiment, this is an activity has been done. You have to show that this is in agreement with law of conservation of mass. Sodium, what is happening? Sodium carbonate plus ethanoic acid is reacting to form sodium ethanoate plus carbon dioxide plus water. What is the mass of sodium carbonate in a reaction? 5.3 gram. Reacted with 6 gram. The products were 2.2 gram. 2.2 gram of carbon dioxide, 0.9 gram of water, 0.9 gram of water, and what is 8.2 gram of sodium ethanoate. What is the mass, total mass of the reactant, student? How much is that? 5.3 plus 6. How much?
11.3 gram.
And what is the total mass of the products?
11.3 gram.
8.2 plus 2.2 plus 0.9. How much it comes?
11.3.
So mass of the reactant is equal to mass of the products. Total mass of the reactant equal to total mass of the product. Is it in agreement with the law of conservation of mass?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Top question 1 answered. Top question 2. Hydrogen and oxygen combine in ratio 1:8 by mass to form water. Hydrogen and oxygen, they combine in the ratio 1:8 to form H2O. What mass of oxygen would be required to react with 3 gram of hydrogen gas? Which law will be applied here? Which law we are applying?
Law of constant proportion.
Law of constant proportion, student. Top question 2. What is the answer? What is our answer? 1 gram of hydrogen will react with how much?
8 gram of oxygen.
Reacts with 8 gram of oxygen. Then 3 gram of hydrogen will react with
24 grams.
Reacts with 8 into 3 by 1, 24 gram of oxygen. So what is the answer? Is that correct answer?
Yes, sir.
All right, students. Then we will begin the next topic. this first topic, the two laws of conservation of, we have already discussed two laws of chemical combination, which are important, after which will be formed the laws of laws of the chemicals will be formed, the student atoms, the molecules, all that we will study. After that, there are more laws which will be studied in higher classes. And then we will continue the second part of this in our next lecture. Okay, bye-bye. I'll see you in the next class.
Thank you, sir.